Hey everybody, what's going on? And today, this is my very first episode of Citrus Corner on Orange Grove 55's channel. So yes, when you see that the video started out with me talking, there's no glitches, there's no adjusting. This is it, folks. This is what you get. And joining me for the very first episode of Citrus Corner, of course, my two good friends, my brothers, the founder of the channel himself, Mr. Orange Grove 55. How you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, George. Congratulations on Citrus Corner, and thank you so much for having me on, brother.
Thank you. I'm very humbled, to say the least, I'm so glad to be part of your channel, and hopefully I'll do it justice. And
definitely.
And of course, what's a good Orange Grove 55 channel with Mr. VashSky, Mr. Freshly Squeezed. How you doing today, sir?
I really do appreciate it. Appreciate you bringing me on here. This has been fun prep for this show in particular. So I really do appreciate you having me on. By the way, I gotta say, to celebrate today's festivities, because right now we're recording the show on October 1st. So I brought this out of the archives right here. Here is an actual 50th guide map that they gave out on the 50th day. You can see, I think, I should have read this before. This one had the vintage map in it, though. I could open it up, but it's like really delicate. But wow. This is the one they gave out on opening day, and on the 50th day, and pair of my gold ears right there.
Nice.
So,
nice.
I
actually have a pair of those. I should have found mine and wore them today.
Oh yeah, okay. That is really, really cool. I had to bust them out because whenever do you get to show this stuff off? But I couldn't help myself. I was like, hey, you know what? Let's represent. I know it's Walt Disney World's 50th, but I kind of wanted to represent in our own Disneyland fashion the 50th of Walt Disney World. So there you go.
Absolutely. Well, as Orange Grove 55 had mentioned in a previous video of what this is all about is Citrus Corner. We're taking all those ripe, fresh oranges and we're importing them all the way over to the East Coast for some juicy Walt Disney World and Disney Cruise Line news. I'm going to do my best to get the news out to you folks on Orange Grove 55's channel as it comes out, involving a lot of Walt Disney World and the Disney Cruise Line and what have you. And today I thought, let's have the guys on to kick off Citrus Corner with, of course, October 1st, it being Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. And why not start it off with some of the nighttime shows that they just premiered. And we're going to start off with the one that they premiered not last night, but the night before. This huge multi-billion-dollar extravaganza that is just it's mind-blowing. And Dre, I do know that you have something to show of this immaculate show.
I think we do. So with KiteTails, I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right. I don't know quite where the money went, but I thought it was fine. I thought. Wait, you said nighttime, right?
Actually, I think all the money went towards that speedboat.
Wait, didn't you say nighttime? Oh wait, you weren't talking about KiteTails? Oh,
that's the second greatest one.
Oh,
let's go to the first one.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I do apologize. Yeah, no, not good, guys. Not good.
Yeah.
That
was a little Citrus Corner humor there, folks. But we're actually talking about Harmonious, which premiered at Epcot. Well, it didn't premiere. It's going to actually premiere to the public tonight, but they gave us a little sneak peek 2 nights ago, and I have to say, for what this show was amped up to be, with all these projections and all this special effects with these barges, aka the floating turds, sitting in front of World Showcase Lagoon, I thought we were going to have like some. I don't. Maybe it was just me. You guys can tell me. I wasn't impressed, and it's just one of those things that unless you're watching it from a certain angle, and we'll get into this with another nighttime show that we're going to be discussing today, that unless you're looking at it in a certain point of view, you can't really depict of what it's showing on the screens.
George, and this is just on a personal level. Like when it comes to nighttime spectaculars, I like shows that feel organic. And what I mean by that is like I like shows that feel like the technology is hidden, right?
Yeah.
That's why I do actually really enjoy the projection mapping and stuff, because it is very hidden. It just shows up when, seemingly out of nowhere. I enjoy World of Color because, you can technically see the little tips of the fountains, but for the most part, it's very hidden, and it's about the show. My main issue with Harmonious is that it's not, the tech is so massive and in the way, it distracts from the show. It's no longer about the projections and the lights and the music. All I see is metal. And that's a big problem for me personally. I just like the shows to feel a little bit more organic, and this show lacks that organic feeling to it big time, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, I agree completely on that. It's quite interesting because OG, you met my mom. My mother's very opinionated, right? She's definitely a personality force, and her response to this was very much like it. Like you said, it's not organic. I cannot. She, in her words, I cannot not see, the couple of tacos out there and the onion. I can't. She could not get past those things. And, when you look at like something like World of Color, I think Bricky from Adventures in Design really broke this down very, really well, which was like World of Color, for example. You have so much of that show just kind of like, it's layers upon layers upon layers, right? So you at first you just see these kind of water effects that come up and they come out of nowhere, and it's just like, wow, this is pretty amazing. You see these amazing fountains then come up, and you like, wow, okay, this has got some scale to it. You see those light globes that come up, and at a certain point you just think like, wow, not only can I not believe what this show can do, but you get the feeling almost that this show can do anything, right? Because it just keeps adding layers and layers and layers on. Then you have the Jack Sparrow moment where it's all fire and stuff, and they just keep adding elements to it. Here, it just plays its hand right at the onset. What you see is what you get, and really, there's really no big surprises after this. And so, a lot of that kind of that dynamic energy that Phantasmic has or World of Color has, and all that, it plays its hand right at the onset, and there's really no big surprises, and it's just in that way it just kind of doesn't work, like you said. It's just exposed metal at that point.
It is, and here's the other thing too, is that, and sometimes Disney sort of loses this, I think, with some of their shows. In my opinion, there's beauty in simplicity, right? Yeah. Sometimes the best moments are just music and lights, or music and water, or whatever, right? Yeah. Well, my favorite scene for World of Color is that one moment when all the fountains are blue and they just kind of rise up and do this, and they're just playing the Little Mermaid themes, the Little Mermaid theme, and over those blue fountains, kind of doing this. There's not much to it. There's not much to it, but it's gorgeous. I get goosebumps every single time. Mm-hmm. It's just that simplicity, right? Mm-hmm. And even at Epcot, they debuted that LED show on Spaceship Earth, the beacon of
the beacon of light,
beacons of light,
and that show with just LED lights and instrumental music conveys more message to me than all of Harmonious. I mean, it captures the spirit of Epcot, that spirit of optimism, that optimistic view of the future, technology. It's uplifting, right? This is not inspiring at all.
It's a story, as far as like with Spaceship Earth, it's a story without having to shove the story in your face. It's just moving. It's, as you both had mentioned, it's organic. With this, what they're trying to kind of push towards, and I kind of understand the route that they were trying to go with this, but again, it just feels like with these nighttime shows in particular, Disney is just kind of band-aiding, quote unquote, of just throwing Disney songs together and trying to come up with a storyline behind them. and by adding with all this technology, and for me, it just doesn't work. And I mean, I know a lot of people said, Illuminations wasn't the great show, compared to other nighttime shows, but I would take Illuminations back in a heartbeat, based off of Harmonious, of what I saw 2 nights ago.
It was quite interesting getting people's reaction feedback because, like you said, OG, the Beacons of Light show that occurred right after Harmonious, and it was the juxtaposition was so. I mean, the contrast was stark. Here you had this kind of technical, masterpiece on a technical level, but it just didn't really kind of hit home in the same way that, hey, a couple twinkle lights on Spaceship Earth did, right?
Right.
I think a lot of that too has to do with the music choice. The Beacons of Light show had the new Epcot theme strewn through. That was the driving force behind that show, and you have like the dun, 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 that kind of, and it just, I mean, it gets you right here. It's like, wow, this is incredible, and there's not a narrator, there's not a vocalized moment, right? But it just hits, and it's like, wow, that worked, and that was the sleeper hit of the night. People were more evangelizing about that than they were about Harmonious, and that kind of tells you, listen, guys, I think we got this wrong here. What's playing right now is the Mulan segment, and we're going to be pretty harsh on this show, I think. There are moments of this show that really do work, and I thought the Mulan segment, I thought it did.
Yes.
I thought it was a good use of technology, of artistry, of kind of theme, and it goes with World Showcase, right? Because it deals with the China Pavilion. All those things, like, I think really, really worked. And I think it's a beautiful segment. And I think this really was the highlight of the show. It's just that there's not enough moments like this. And the way they transition between them and just the flow of the show, it doesn't quite work out, I think, the way they wanted.
Well, I want to touch upon 2 things that you just mentioned, Dre.
Sure.
Yeah, you're right. About the beacon of light, right? How it's just the lights and the music, and it just hits. Disney, we've seen it over and over again with Disney. When you just have that simple concept and you have killer music, it's usually a home run. Look at the Main Street Electrical Parade. They were literally Christmas lights on floats rolling down Main Street with a great, I don't know what you want to call it, soundtrack or whatever.
The Moon soundtrack, right? Yeah.
But it just hits. It's a simple concept with great music, and boom, it was a legendary parade. That's all you need. This show does too much and accomplishes nothing. Another thing that I wanted to mention is you're right about the Mulan segment. This is absolutely gorgeous. And the great thing about it is it's an IP, right? But it feels very Chinese. And so it pacifies the executives that want the franchises, but yet it also fits and respects the park that it's in. You understand watching this why this is an Epcot. I had no idea why Hercules is in this show.
Yeah. Or even the Lion King.
Lion King, what you're seeing on screen now.
That, to me, that's something. Now, when I actually watched the Lion King, when I looked at that segment right there, I thought that would have been perfect for the Rivers of Light.
Yeah.
That is something that could be used in Animal Kingdom that they never utilized.
Right.
Because you have that small amount of space. And Dre, you and I were talking about this the other day, as opposed to, again, what would you rather go see? The Rivers of Light or the light up of the Tree of Life? Me, I'd rather go see the light up of the Tree of Life.
Yep. Absolutely.
Simplicity wins the day. It always does.
Yeah. No, I think, and I have a clip here of Steve Davison talking about the show and talking about it in a way that I've not quite heard before from other interviews. Do you mind if I play that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Let me pause this real fast. Let me get to here.
I think our viewers will want a breath of fresh air anyway.
Nice little palate cleanser.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right. Bring this up, man. Here we go.
I'm Steve Davison. I'm creative director for Harmonious through Walt Disney Imagineering Live Entertainment.
Okay, so you're doing Harmonious and Enchantment then?
No, I just did Harmonious because it was such a big, monstrous thing to kind of tackle.
Okay.
And bring to life. And we wanted to do something really special and different. So Harmonious really is about bringing the world together. And the idea was to take Disney music and now take World Showcase and have World Showcase literally bring that story to life through them. So when we go out to do a film, we actually go to that culture. And then the culture inspires the film. What we did was then say, okay, this is what we got from you. We're now going to take the music and art and give it back to you. How would you represent it to us?
Okay.
So we went around the world, literally. We went to Africa, we went to India, and we basically went to these cultures and said, how would you do Jungle Book now? Or how would you do Lion King? And they put it back to us. So when you look at the show, you're actually going to see the world presenting it, which I thought was very fun and different, and not just like a Disney musicade. Like, oh, we're just going to go around and do this. It's very authentic. It has over 100 different recording sessions all over the world, 9 different countries, 240 musicians and singers. But what's cool about it is we kept the traditions. So when we first start, we do chapter 1, which is called Gather. So everyone comes around the lagoon.
Right.
I did a really crazy thing where I took 5 of the different openings from Disney films that were a cappella singing, and I put them on top of each other. And they're all in a relative key of F, so it worked. So now you're going to hear Hunchback of Notre Dame set against Frozen, set against Moana, set against Lion King, all singing together for once for the first time.
Okay.
So, and it's really what we wanted the show to be about this blending of culture, that when you hear it all together, we all are more alike than we are different. Right. And then we cycle into a really inspirational piece, which we call a dawn. So Lion King brings the dawn, and then we go into Go the Distance and How Far I'll Go. And then we light up World Showcase and show you that, like anyone in this world, like our characters, you can go anywhere and you can be anything. And then that leads us into section 2, which is Celebrate. And that's where we start to go from, we begin in the Middle East with Aladdin, and then we jump to India to Jungle Book, and then we jump into China and Mulan. From there, we go to Africa and do Lion King through the eyes of Africa. Then we go to Europe, and then we start with the Beauty and the Beast piece that takes us into France, and we do Out There. We then end up in Scotland, where we do a whole thing with Touch the Sky. Okay. And then we come back home to North America, and we start off with Coco and do this whole blow up in kind of this Latin America thing that's really explosive. And then we end up back in America itself, where we do Dig a Little Deeper, and we do this whole gospel piece that will bring the house down. I mean, it's really amazing what it does. And then we take a breath, and as some executives upstairs, when we presented it, because we actually brought in a live gospel choir to pitch it, they're like, how are you going to top that? I said, well, we'll see. And we actually wrote 2 different finales, and the one you'll see tonight is the new one, which is all about, it's a song from Hunchback of Notre Dame called Someday. And it really brings everyone who sang in the show together. It is a world choir, it's a world orchestra, you feel all the textures. And it's not the traditional, we can go the distance finale. Right. It's totally about, someday when we are wiser, when we all can do this together, we can make this world a better place. Okay. And it does one of my big mega finales. But it ends and we take the world away. We do that piece where we bring the whole world together, and then we show you that it can be here one day, but it can be gone the next. But if we all join together, that one little blue marble can come back, which it does. And then it's just surrounded by this glorious choir and every piece of pyro on earth that can be launched into the sky. And it really leaves you kind of with that breathtaking kind of wow that we can do. Okay. But I think it'll make you cry. I think a lot of people, if you have any kind of sense of heart within you, you'll feel it. And then from there we leave a beautiful walkout, which we basically say, take the song with you, or take a song with you, and remember that it's better when we sing it together. And that someday can be today through you, is really kind of the message of the show. Wow. That you can take, Disney inspires everyone around the world. Our songs go anywhere. There's no borders for us. we do 32 different languages when we take something out into the world. And I think that's really special because we can touch somebody in India as well as Africa, as well as New Mexico if you want. And really say, you can be something special too. So go for it.
Yeah, so I'll let me get the show back here. Gotta thank, TimTracker. I guess, sorry about that. No copyright. Okay. TimTracker got an interview with Steve Davison. That was from his video, so check out his channel.
I guess to Steve's point, I guess we're just a couple of tin men because I know
I was going to ask you how much that translated on the show.
So going back to his first statement when he had mentioned, because that's right out of the gate, that's where Harmonious lost me, was when he said on the layers of the music where he just kind of stacked them on top of one another.
Yeah.
Going back to what the Sherman Brothers wanted to do originally for It's a Small World, there is a reason why you don't combine different languages and sounds and music together. It doesn't sound like anything appealing.
No, you hit the nail on the head, George. And actually, that was going to be the finale for Small World, from what I understand, was each country was going to sing It's a Small World in their own language, and it was really a convoluted mess, and that's why they decided not to do that. That's a great point.
Yeah, so like right out of the gate, like when they did do the layers of the songs with Moana and Hercules and Hunchback, it was like, oh, it's like too much. It's like you can't understand what one thing is saying. It's like a high schooler making a mixtape for his friends. It's like, but I will say on a positive note for the show, there was certain aspects of the show, as Dre, you had mentioned with Mulan. Also, the choice of song at the very end, Someday, from the Hunchback soundtrack, I thought was appropriate to kind of end it for me, as far as the message, because I have listened to that song before on the Hunchback soundtrack, and I can understand why they chose that song, and of how the finale is, which we'll get into the other nighttime show, which that finale, I have to say, the finale here was a little bit more better with when they have the bolts of the pyro coming towards the center of the lagoon. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. In regards to Someday, like when Steve was kind of explaining and everything, I agree with you, George, in the sense that like I understand what they were trying to convey.
The song I thought enjoyed the way that he wanted to use the song. It was completely out of what the execution of it was completely different than what they had originally envisioned.
Yeah, and for me personally, and this is just maybe just on a personal note though, like Hunchback of Notre Dame is a masterpiece. I love that movie. But I find Hunchback of Notre Dame to be an extremely depressing movie. It's very, very sad. Yeah. So that's the only problem I had with that song in a park like Epcot, which is supposed to inspire. I get why the song was chosen, but for me, it just anything Hunchback is just sad to me.
I think honestly, to use the song, it shouldn't have been the song for the finale.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's tough. And OG, you sent me a text from your friend.
Yeah.
Who just had a very opposite reaction. Who just said, why are they using Someday? I mean, this is a very bleak song, and it is. When I heard it, I was like, wow, is that the song from Hunchback of Notre Dame? And I couldn't believe they were using that song, because that song, in the context that you see it in, is supposed to be like, obviously what the France went through, what Paris went through, not just in that movie, but in history, was very dark, right? You had Frollo essentially burning down all of Paris to find the friggin' gypsies. It's like, this is a bleak time period. And it represents that, right? It's like, someday we'll be fair. Someday, this stuff won't happen. And that's kind of the optimistic message of Hunchback of Notre Dame, is that we've progressed quite heavily from that point, right? in this context, it's like, is it like really bad here? I thought I was supposed to escape into something else and have this kind of optimistic message, and yet I'm taken down a peg. It's this very kind of like you said, OG. It's this very kind of depressing thing, and I don't think the way they wanted to translate it, I don't think translated well in this form factor. I do apologize, George. I don't mean to disagree with you too much.
Yeah, I think it's for me because, believe it or not, despite of what the song means, I listen to that song a lot. Believe it or not, like out of just Harmonious. I don't ask me why. Well, I'm also from the '90s, and I'm a big All for One fan.
Wow.
So I guess it's just more so the song itself just hit with me because it's a song that I listen to.
Oh, that's cool.
Just in general, but I do get what you're saying as far as what it's supposed to represent for the show.
Yeah,
it wasn't. Again, it's almost like they kind of like did a cut and paste. It was like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Let's just cut this, and
well, if you heard
on a paper mache, and it's like, okay, you have a kindergarten kind of masterpiece.
Right. Well, if you heard, he said this was the second iteration of that finale. So obviously there were some reservations.
Well, and and then when I heard that too, I was actually just going to bring up. I wonder, not to get, political or anything, but it makes me wonder if what's going on with the world today, they kind of threw that in as kind of like a hidden message sort of thing, as a quick little, Disney's way of saying, okay, this is what we feel, this is what we believe, because it was so easy to do. It wasn't something that they had to drastically change, and he even admitted to that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching Steve talk about, like, he kind of in the early on in that clip, he kind of pitches the show right to us, kind of explains kind of gives his case for what this show is. And honestly, if I was an executive at Disney and he gave me that pitch, I would have bought it. What he said was like, we're going to take these movies, give them to various countries and see what they do with them, and kind of give them back to us, right?
But when you first watched this, was that the initial thought that you had?
No, well, yeah, and I was just going to say, the pitch was fantastic, and in theory, it was very, very much convincing, but in execution, it didn't do that for me. It didn't do that. I didn't get that from it at all. I
mean, I didn't get the 100 recording sessions and 240 musicians from around the world. I didn't. I mean, it just didn't translate. And I think, look, this goes into Someday and some of the messaging. It feels preachy. It feels forced. It doesn't feel. Obviously they're changing the message of Epcot. They're changing, like, the kind of the theme of Epcot. And I get that. I understand that. I just don't think it translated well, even with their renewed vision of it. It just didn't jive, and it just felt like they were more concerned about messaging and this kind of underlying theme, and they were about the fundamental and basics of a great nighttime show, the great foundational principles of a nighttime show, and there's some stuff that works. I actually think that the multiple languages does work. I do think though it could work better if the vocal qualities of each of the performers was a little bit more aligned, was more similar than it was, because sometimes you'll hear it and it's kind of jarring, like, whoa, that's a completely different singer with a completely different cadence, with a completely different tonality to their voice, and it's kind of like, oh, all right, that's another language there. Whereas I think if they had vocalists who were similar in tone and tenor, and kind of sung, different stanzas or bars, I think that could have worked a little bit better in terms of the harmony of the soundtrack, I suppose.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dre, in that, like, I actually think that they're going to bring these franchises in because that's what Disney's going to do now.
Yeah.
But like, I think it was a good compromise to actually have them done in different languages, because I feel having that having these franchises, sung in different languages is really, that's the one thing that felt like Epcot to me. It is the varying languages and a very global feel to it. That was actually a positive aspect of it. But like you said, though, it was the execution of that, though, that kind of dropped the ball. It was the way the singers were too different, and it just didn't flow very well.
Yeah. One notable example of this is when they go into the Hercules segment, I Can Go the Distance, right? They sing it in English first, and it's like, okay, there's a tonality and tenor to the vocalization, and then they go into like this kind of almost like this Greek opera voice, to represent the Greek version of it, and it's just it like throws you off. It's like, whoa, okay, that's pretty jarring. Now they do use that moment to launch the fireworks, but it still is. It's still a little jarring. It still doesn't play quite as I think well as they may have actually thought. That's just kind of my. What, in your guys' opinion, which segments did you like the best? Which segments did you not like?
Go ahead, George.
Definitely the Mulan. Like the Mulan one stood out to me the most. I also quite enjoyed the Coco scene, just like with all the color and the aspect, again, because of the culture of Coco. It represents what World Showcase means. And I think that's what Disney needed more of for this particular show. As far as with, and I could be, not as sensitive to this, but for me, Moana, Hercules, and as much as I love the song Someday, even for Hunchback, I don't think those were the appropriate films to be added for Harmonious. Coco, Mulan, I mean, I guess you can kind of balance it out with Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, but I mean, this is what happens when you constantly have to keep on adding an IP. Sooner or later, you're going to be repeating yourself, and you're going to have 3 different shows with the same songs.
Yeah.
They use Jungle Book again. Like,
I know. This is the thing, and I love you, Steve. I love you, Steve. He is a genius. He's done amazing work, but he utilizes the same stuff a lot over and over again. Like, you'll notice Under the Sea, I Want to Be Like You, I See the Light. You see a lot of these same songs in multiple shows he's done, and it's just, I wish he'd branch out a little more. To answer your question, Dre, I agree with George. I think the Mulan segment was fantastic, and I love the Coco segment. The Coco segment. That was fire. That was really, really good. And they felt like Epcot because they're very connected to their. They're very cultural, and it just felt like World Showcase. A lot of other stuff, I just felt like I was kind of scratching my head, like, why is that in here? Like the Hercules thing, like you mentioned, they sang it in Greek. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I didn't like when I watched it. I didn't know that. I mean, it doesn't feel like it fits into the show. You don't really get that.
If they were still going to stick with the IP, and I know it doesn't really have a strong soundtrack, but I mean, they could have had a nice like type of score along with it, because again, it's one of the pavilions. Do something with Luca, because you could have had a nice Italian type of background score, with all the sets of the scope of that film. I mean, just watching that, it kind of like reminds me of like my grandparents coming over from, Sicily and everything. It had that Italian culture. So why not implement the IP, but it doesn't necessarily have to have this from the soundtrack of the film. You can add your own background, sort of like how they do with Soarin'. Soarin' has a very breathtaking soundtrack, and it has no connection to an IP whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You could have added something like that with the projection and the fireworks and the water, because again, that's the elements of what Epcot. Well, that's what Epcot used to be. You can't really say that's what it is now.
It's interesting. A lot of people complain about like IP in Epcot. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, the IP isn't the issue. It's always going to be the execution. Like for an example, The Rocketeer is an IP. Mm-hmm. It's a franchise or a film, whatever you want to call it. they used to play that music, I believe, in the end when you walk into Epcot, the entrance. That theme song to the Rocketeer is so Epcot. It's so Epcot. It's uplifting. It's optimistic. It's inspiring. It could be the Epcot theme song almost. It's so spot on, but yet it comes from an IP. It can be done. It just has to be done in the right way.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're watching the Jungle Book segment now, and it's like the animation's quite weird. I know what they were going for, the marionette kind of puppets. It's just a little weird. It just doesn't quite play well. Why is Jungle Book and Epcot? Like, what? It's interesting because I was expecting some stuff that was a little bit more representative of World Showcase. Like you said, like, where's Ratatouille? Like, where's, in this instance, Frozen would have been appropriate because it's in the World Showcase. You shove Frozen everywhere else. This is the place that it would have done it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's crazy. You're right. It's in World Showcase. It has its own attraction. Now I know Arendelle isn't a real place, but it's heavily inspired by Norway. You could have done amazing things with that. I don't know why of all the shows.
And they didn't actually even need any of the actual songs. They could have just played the Norwegian score.
They play it like a little bit in the beginning, like nah hey, and that's it. That's as much as you're gonna get.
Yeah, that's it.
What? I mean, play that out for a little bit, and that's one of the things that was kind of brutal because, two things. One is the harmonization of different songs, like the Moana and Hercules, didn't quite work out the way I think they wanted either. When you have these kind of juxtaposing songs, I don't know, those didn't go well.
Yeah,
some of them did. Some of the transitions were good, but overall, yeah. But then more than that, they spend like, it's got to be like, it just feels like forever in the Tiana segment, right? It feels very, very long and very, very boisterous, and it's like, man, you should have cut that down a little bit and given some more time to some of these other IPs that you did include, because there's just not enough time to get kind of emotionally invested into them. There's not enough kind of length to them to really to have it pull at your heartstrings that I think the way they intended to. They just go so fast. They're just trying to include so much of maybe what they recorded, or maybe what they got in recording sessions, or different vocalizations from all over the world. Something they're just trying to include so much of it, and it's just like it's detrimental. You're just focusing on too much. Cut down a little bit and expand on some of the more remarkable points of this show, like the Mulan segment that we're seeing now, or the Coco segment. I think is well timed, but some of the other segments, they could have been extended out. I mean, you get Beauty and the Beast for just like a little moment, and then boom, we're right into Hunchback of Notre Dame. Give a little bit to that. It's appropriate. I mean, it's the France Pavilion right over there. Let's just extend it out a little bit.
You gotta dig a little deeper.
Yeah. and it goes on for a while, and it's like, oh man, it's like,
but it
feels like a long time.
Some of these segments of the Jungle Book and the Lion King, as I said, that would have been appropriate for Animal Kingdom, that they could have done something. Like, it has no correlation to Epcot whatsoever. I mean, I get because of where the setting is, but when you don't have that type of IP that can hold that culture, it's just not going to go well.
And I think the reason why they included that is to include something from Africa. Because if you hear Steve Davison talk about it, he goes, the reason why they chose certain things was to have it representative of the continents and not so much the countries around World Showcase. And I didn't get that on like all three of my viewings that I had on it. I never understood that until he actually explained it to me. And I'm sorry, but when you have to have a pamphlet that explains the show to you, the before and after, I'm sorry, that's not a well executed show.
Well, yeah, and it comes down to, like I said many times during this segment, is that it comes down to simplicity. These shows work better when they're easily digestible and there's not a lot of explanation. Yeah. And like you said, not having to need like an instruction manual to understand what's going on. So didn't really work for me, but like, it does have its moments.
And I know this has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's a very important point that Disney really needs to focus and really pay attention to. Mm-hmm. This is what worries me with the Star Cruiser. When you have something that is so much of a hype with technology and you're pushing forward to say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Same thing with Harmonious. It was either going to be really, really good or it wasn't going to be good at all. There is no medium notion to that. And I bring that up is because that's what I got out of Harmonious. I thought this is going to be spectacular to have these barges sitting in the center of World Showcase and become a complete eyesore. So if it's going to sit there, Disney has to do it justice. And I just didn't see it.
I think I think with this show, I really do believe, I think Steve Davison and co, they got a little bit too esoteric. They got a little bit too heady. They got a little bit too philosophical, and some of these kind of grander concepts that just don't. I mean, come on. I mean, people when they go to Florida, it's like, here's my brain. I'll pick it up after I leave. It's like they just it's. And that was the problem with Epcot before, right? It was like a little bit too heady. It was a little bit too, edutainment, so to speak, and kind of there was these kind of highbrow concepts that just did not translate well using the medium that they chose or in the setting that they have them in. And I think this is representative of that, unfortunately, and to the show's detriment. And so I think with, like you said, George, they're just getting a little cute with it. They're just getting a little bit, it's like pull back, like focus on the fundamentals. Focus on the fundamentals of a great nighttime show. Focus on the great fundamentals of story, of character. If you're going to have IP, the greatest thing about IP is the emotional connection to that. So let it play out so that you can have an emotional connection with what you're seeing right there, and not just go from, clip to clip to clip to clip to clip, and all that kind of stuff. Right now the Coco's segment's playing right now. The thing I'll say about this is I really, really, really do like this segment the whole way through, and they deal with Saludos Amigos, which is great. The one thing is that the opening has the kind of strumming of the guitar, and then they go with the kind of like the beat. I would have preferred them to go with the kind of when Miguel is singing to Mama Coco, at the end there, this kind of like slower beat of it, and then go into the kind of the rising stanzas, so to speak. So, I don't know. It's just, I think there's a version of the show that works. This is not it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, you guys want to flip to the other side here?
Yeah. So now we're gonna go from Epcot and we're gonna move over to the Magic Kingdom. Now, this one I actually had really high hopes for, because after watching Harmonious, I thought, okay, it's gonna be a comeback with Disney Enchantment. And now, of what happened last night, and I know you fellas probably seen it too, I'm gonna have to probably rewatch this again once it actually is premiered to the public, because I would like to know of what I have seen doesn't seem like the description of all what they were promising us for this fireworks show. I mean, the one main thing that I do remember is they said the whole castle was supposed to turn gold. Everything surrounding it around Main Street, the buildings were supposed to be gold. I don't know if that Disney opted out of that last minute or if there was some technical malfunctions, but even again, with a show like this, and when you're going to replace it with a show taking out Happily Ever After and even Wishes, and you're going to give us this, for me, this didn't cry out 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. Again, you're taking these IPs, you're just kind of throwing the songs into the mix. It really had nothing. And as you can see on the screen now, it's the little part of the castle that you can see something, you can't even make out what it is. Depending on where if you're all the way the back on Main Street, don't even think to even wonder what's on the castle, because you'll never see it.
Yeah. Well, when I was talking to Dre about this before the show, I think one of the main reasons why Happily Ever After really resonated with people is the message of that show is a very human one. Okay, in that it's about the choices you make in life that kind of leads you on that journey to your happily ever after. It's a very kind of simple, human, kind of message. Everyone can relate to that. This is like gobbledygook. This is the magic is you. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It's not relatable. There's no, what does that even mean? And I think that's a big part of the success of Happily Ever After is that you connected with it. I don't connect with the magic is me. I don't know what that even means.
No, I completely agree. I honestly, I mean, not even just the messaging. I think the songs are. I think Happily Ever After has a better song. It just plays better. It's just the scores are just higher. The bars are just deeper. It's just, like you said, the message, magic is you. I mean, I didn't pay $6,000 to learn that the magic was in me all the time. I'm here to experience the magic here at Walt Disney World, right? It's like, what is that? Like you said, it doesn't mean anything.
No.
No. And this is the really. I mean, this. All three of these shows, that were hyped up to be, this is the 50th. These are the 50th shows. I was disappointed with each and every one of them. And as I texted you guys, I was like, what happens when, all these shows, when Disney strikes out 3 times? Like what what occurs right there? Because in these particular instances, in Harmonious and Enchantment, they're replacing, like you said, George, they're replacing like beloved shows. Like absolutely beloved shows, and in some cases Epcot Forever, but Reflections of Earth, and now with Happily Ever After, with shows that at least not only what we were experiencing, but what other people online were experiencing, subpar replacements for what preceded them, and that's the most unfortunate part about all this.
Yeah, it is. It is unfortunate. And I'm very curious to see how long these shows last. I mean, I'm sure, Enchantment will run the entire length of the 50th, but will Happily Ever return after that? Will it return? I don't know. Maybe. Disney's brought back fireworks before. Yeah. I mean, we've gotten at Disneyland Resort, Remember Dreams Come True. Well after the 50th. Quite a bit. So it could come back. It might return.
And look, that's a fan favorite because it deals with the park. I can't take credit for this, but one of the great tweets I was reading about yesterday was you could have played Enchantment anywhere. Right. You could have played it in Paris. You could have played it in Shanghai, and it would have played the same. There's almost nothing Walt Disney World about it. And that was.
And remember Dreams Come True. That was narrated by Julie Andrews, correct?
Yeah. It was,
and that entire fireworks show was about the park. It was Pirates of the Caribbean. It went from land to land. You started on Main Street, you went all the way down to Tomorrowland. All of it. It was a love letter to Disneyland.
And I remember when you had mentioned OG a while back when they were just planning the 50th anniversary, and you said, "I hope that Disney doesn't stick to that same typical way of just throwing the IPs in there with the music just to create a fireworks show. You want to see more of the parks, more of the presence of what the fireworks show is all about." And unfortunately, this is what we got. Because I was hoping that they would have done something sort of like what they did with Disneyland Forever for Disneyland 60th, where they kind of started the show with talking about, if you were standing here 60 years ago, you would have been in the middle of orange groves, and one visionary man, I mean, that started the show. That's what got my attention to say, okay, I'm hooked. I'm interested in this, what they have to say. Yeah. And it's even the start of this, it just didn't really make any sense to me. It has, again, I'm going to be repeating myself. It has no correlation to the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. If they would have played some maybe clips of the opening of Walt Disney World where Julie Andrews was performing down on Main Street, and, hearing Walt here and there, like talk about the Florida project and his experimental prototype community of tomorrow, in between the fireworks, it would have made more sense. It would have created a storyline to say, okay, this is what this is about. And again, it had nothing to do with anything. And as I said, you can't even see the projections were even. I mean, Happily Ever After had much better projections than this.
Now, do you guys think that the approaches, because you definitely do see different approaches when it comes to anniversaries in Anaheim and Orlando. In Anaheim, it's very, very nostalgia driven. A lot of Walt, a lot of there's a lot of that nostalgia baked into those anniversaries for Disneyland. Now, you don't see that so much with Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a demographic difference because you have a lot of not so in Florida, you don't have those frequent weekly visitors.
Yeah.
It's more the family that comes maybe only twice every 10 years or something. Is it that, or is it just why the different approaches with these anniversaries?
No, I think you're correct, OG, and I think that's why they may have pulled back a little bit with even Disneyland's 60th, right? Because for people who are coming here for the first time or coming here for maybe their second time or whatever, they don't have maybe that same connection with the nostalgia of these parks that maybe, hardcore fans do. And maybe that's what influenced that decision to not go nostalgia heavy with it. George, you bring up Julie Andrews and the I think you're referring to the special that
yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, they could have had Julie Andrews walking down singing about Zippity. Oh wait a minute, that wouldn't have quite worked out. No, there were some songs in there. Yes, they should have. They could have pulled them, and I think on that note, OG, they didn't have to dedicate the whole show to it. Just give a little bit, just give a little bit to those guys.
Right.
One of the segments that kind of came up in my head while we were doing pre-show for this was what if they did they set Sleeping Beauty Castle on top of Cinderella Castle at the scale that it's at, and you just saw it, and they go into kind of some history, and you hear Walt say, "Hey, over here in Florida, we enjoy something that we had never had in Anaheim, the blessing of size," and you just see the pixie dust and the castle be revealed to be what it is in comparison to Disneyland. I think that would have played amazingly. They didn't even do that, though. Not even a glimpse of Walt Disney in Walt Disney World. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's incredible to me. It's absolutely incredible to me in a resort that bears his full name. I love, by the way, that Roy pushed for that. Mm-hmm. It's not Disney World. It's Walt Disney World. Yeah, I love that. That's a great tribute to Walt. I just absolutely love that. But
this was sort of kind of like a slap in the face for him, though. It had nothing to do with him whatsoever to say, hey, this was his grand final dream that he never got to see complete. But with everyone that was involved with him over the years and knew the expectations of what he wanted to accomplish, it may not be exactly what he wanted, but they still honored him to say, we're going to go forward with the Florida project. And now here it is, 50 years. It's still growing strong. To what? To a corporate fireworks show. That's exactly what it is.
No, it's Disney Today Greatest Hits. It's this is the 50th anniversary. The greatest hits was Happily Ever After. That was the greatest hits and a much better executed version of it. This is like we said before, could have played this in Shanghai. This doesn't mean anything. It's just, right. And I heard a lot of people say, hey, these shows really aren't special. They aren't kind of defined to their locations or their themes or whatever. They're interchangeable, and that's I was like, wow, that's actually profound. The show itself, like you said, George, you mentioned projections, right? And I think that's one thing that Happily Ever After did a lot better. They integrated the architecture of the castle into the projections much more heavily. So it wasn't just like a neutral canvas and we just kind of project onto it. No, it's the canvas of the castle, and we're going to take that into account with our projections. Whereas this, they don't do that almost at all. It's just, you can see right here, they just clip out movie segments right there, and they just place it on that portion of the castle, and that's it. There's no integration with the castle almost ever. In Happily Ever After, you had turns looked like they were flying off, and characters in various balconies and so forth. I mean, it looked polished, it looked refined, it looked, and in this they just, as my mother said a lot last night, they regressed. They regressed from their previous show, and it was very unfortunate to see.
Yeah, and Jay, you mentioned like these shows being interchangeable. This could happen at any resort, and you know what? I think that's by design. Because if you remember, there was years ago, we used to have. I know this is gonna be a weird comparison, but stick with me on this. Years ago at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, we used to have resort-specific napkins and cups, right? Then they decided, we're just gonna put Disney Parks on it, so that way. They can ship these napkins and cups and plastic bags to any resort.
Yep.
Right. And it fit. It's kind of like a cost saver thing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me with these fireworks shows if it's kind of generic by design. So hey, if it resonates here in Florida, they can have it over in Paris or something and utilize it over there. I mean, you would have to tweak it a little bit to fit their castle, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think maybe by design it's generic, so they can kind of do that. You can't really look, if the show was heavily focused on, 50 years ago this was a swamp, and now you can't ship it anywhere. It's only Florida now, right?
Yeah.
So I don't agree with that decision, but I think that's the rationale behind it.
It could be. Look, I remember Dreams Come True. That featured some wishes in it, which was over at Walt Disney World playing at the time. I think it outlasted Remember even, but it featured wishes segments like wishes. That was in Remember Dreams Come True at Disneyland. So they have incorporated other, fireworks or any other nighttime extravaganzas into others, right? I kind of get that, and I kind of get that mentality, like. Why record new segments for new pieces of music or new animation for different shows around the world? I get it. I just think you can do that with a bunch of shows. It's the 50th.
Yeah,
it's the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, it wasn't.
That's why.
Yeah, it's not the time to be doing that. And of how powerful Wishes was, and I think of how. Even people before they even knew what they were going to get with Happily Ever After there was like an outcry of like, keep wishes. There was not one projection on that castle with wishes. It was only the fireworks with the music. And that's all that show needed.
Right.
And I know they wanted to use to implement more technology and bring the castle to life, which it fit well with Happily Ever After. But I mean, it's to the notion that if you just had a fireworks show with music for Wishes, and it's a beloved show even to this day, that I even have my Wishes farewell shirt, and you have a show like this, it's not memorable. It's like, I can watch this and it could be gone tomorrow, and it's like, well, I won't bat an eyelash.
Yeah,
I heard that a lot about Harmonious, where when people saw it, it was like, okay, I've seen it. I don't have to see it again. I was like, ooh, that's, and I'm getting a lot of the same vibes with Enchantment, unfortunately. It's one of those shows, like you said, George, it's like, I never need to see this again. And it's like, who knows how long this is going to be here for?
Yeah, and I think that, in my opinion, I think that the situation in Epcot is far worse than what we're seeing here in the Magic Kingdom, because this is just a projection fireworks show at Magic Kingdom that can be swapped out easily. Yeah. Epcot, they built those enormous barges in that lagoon. Oh, God. And what are you going to do? I mean, you can change out the show, but I think the problem is a huge problem with Harmonious are the barges. They're a distraction.
Well, currently not right now, not during the daytime, because you know what they're using those barges for? They put up the 50th logo on them, and they sit there like that through the whole entire day until showtime.
Oh, man. Oh, boy.
Let's represent.
Yeah.
The thing about Harmonious, you bring it up, and I forgot to say this during our Harmonious segment, but I'll bring it up now. The show had to be good enough. It was already an uphill battle because it's replacing Reflections of Earth. It's replacing... Right. People became attached to Epcot forever at the end there. It's replacing those shows that people feel are very much superior now, but are beloved. And it has to be better than that. And then, not only that, but now it has to justify its existence on the lagoon for 100% of the time. And that's, previously it was an insurmountable task. Now it's just completely insurmountable. It's just, how do you top that? How do you get better than that? So the pressure to perform, the pressure to have their show be unbelievably amazing, it's just too much. No show could overcome those deficits already. No. But to have it be as underwhelming as it was, that was surprising.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder. I mean, it really does make me wonder, like the future of those barges, if they would remove them, if Harmonious doesn't resonate, or if they would just swap out the show. Probably just swap out the show. I would imagine removing the barges at this point would be a pricey endeavor, but it's going to be interesting to follow. It'll be very interesting to follow.
Anybody have an oversized plunger?
Because there turns out in the lagoon that is the toilet, right? By the way, this is George comparison, not mine. Okay. No, it's fine. No, you know what? I have a clip.
That is one big pile of shit.
There you go.
There you go. It's official.
Look, I think Harmonious was a victim of corporate influence, and honestly, it's kind of funny because they sing about someday when greed doesn't pay. That's funny to me. I think it is a victim of budget cuts. I think I think the intention was to always have those barges coming in and out. It was always to have those barges, and if that wasn't the intention, they could have had like collapsible screens or inflatables that don't aren't present 100% of the time. Maybe there's some infrastructure, but not much, right? Or maybe they were integrated theme-wise. Maybe they were like Rockwork or something that could better integrate themselves into the lagoon itself on a permanent basis. I don't think they would have ever gone with what they did, and it's really unfortunate because now you're just up against it, and I don't think anything was going to be satisfactory. And it's I do think if they're going to keep the infrastructure, I do think we'll get a kind of a new kind of maybe slightly altered version of the show, because honestly, it's really just crucial for those restaurant bookings and reservations and those vacation packages. Like Epcot really demands a show. Its foundation is kind of built around one, so that has to be up to snuff. And honestly, look, the precedent for this, Rivers of Light only lasts a couple of years, and they took those barges, they took everything of that infrastructure, and they like destroyed it almost. But they still have that viewing area, right? That they can do stuff later. So
I mean, if they were to actually do something with all those barges, like in time, like if it's not really working out, move it over to Animal Kingdom, because that way it has a smaller foundation where the Rivers of Light show used to be, and they could have something more grand, but because of the small scale, it'll bring it more to life.
Yeah.
Well, and the viewing area is kind of like its own like nested corner of the park, right? Like not a lot of it's not visual the whole day, or it's not like a lagoon where you're just walking around it all day. It's kind of its own little thing. So maybe you could bring some infrastructure over.
Yeah, like the only way that you can possibly get like a viewing of it is if you're passing through Asia, and if you're kind of like look through the pillars, you can kind of see the
right.
Stadium.
And in that way, if you had infrastructure just permanently there, it wouldn't be such an eyesore or a detraction from the area around it, right? In the same way that World Showcase is. It just it just doesn't quite work. And honestly too, the kind of the ring, you can only see that from kind of the middle of what was previously Future World, or like the American Pavilion. Like you have to see it like dead on. If you see it from you can't really see it from the side, and there's so much animation playing on those screens. So it's like even that, where you have this kind of narrow viewing area for this show, that's a detraction as well.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I want to, while we still have a few minutes, I want to, if you guys don't mind, do you want to get into KiteTails a little bit?
Yeah.
You want to get into
I got it right here.
I
got it right here.
Let's go for it.
Well, here we go.
Oh boy.
We'll play it back here.
Now fun. Like, honestly, with this one, I'm a little less harsh on this one. I think maybe it's surprising, but I'll get into it, but you guys go first. I'll tell you what I think, but you guys get into it first with KiteTails.
I just want to preface this, guys, by saying that it is over $100 a day to enter this park. Just so we understand here. That's all I'll say. Go ahead, George.
This kind of show, especially like this is something that I'm used to seeing, that if I'm just bypassing like on Main Street, like where you have like I'm not even comparing the show to the Dapper Dans, because the Dapper Dans is 100 times better, but like where you can kind of see like, okay, something's going on over here, something like this isn't something that I would have to actually stop and say, ooh, I really want to see this. This is something that I would expect to see in
SeaWorld.
Yes.
Yeah.
SeaWorld, minus the water, Six Flags, sort of something like just a generic kind of throw in together. Again, not for the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. I don't know really what they were thinking as far as doing this. I mean, Baloo looks like he's about to take a nosedive right into the water. I mean, they don't even have him it's Super Bear. He's I don't.
Keep watching. They'll set him down right there in one of in the viewing area there.
That's
It just
funny.
kind of collapses into it. Go ahead, OG.
Well, this show, I'm a little less harsh on this one, because I actually do think there's a number of things that I feel like it fits Animal Kingdom. It's a very Asian inspired kind of thing. These big kites and what have you, which is kind of cool. Is it a nighttime spectacular? Is it comparable to Fantasmic or World of Color?
Watch. Poof.
Boom.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
So is it a big nighttime spectacular that I'm going to sit here and wait 2 hours before showtime to watch? No, like George mentioned, this is very much something that I would watch in passing. This is something that they should probably have playing periodically through the day as just like a kind of a passerby kind of thing. But it's just not enough for me to queue up and wait for this. I don't know. It adds a lot of great atmosphere, I think, for the park. A lot of cool kinetic energy. I think it fits the park very well. It just isn't spectacular,
Yeah. This one's kind of a head scratcher to me. I understand, like, they have this viewing area. I understand they kind of want to balance out the attendance between the parks. They kind of have to do something here. I don't know if this is it. The execution is just, I don't know. It's just not there.
In a way,
it kind of looks cheap.
I feel bad for Disney because their expectations of what they're having in their mind, because this all stems back to the Rivers of Light. They thought this show is going to be so successful that we're going to bet on actually making a seating area for people to come in and watch this show. It lasted only a few years, and now they're stuck with this viewing area that it took millions of dollars to make. So now
do we know do you know the budget of this seating area, George?
I don't at the top of my head. I do know, I'm trying to remember. I mean, aside from Rivers of Light, I think was, do not quote me, I think it was about $4 million, just the Rivers of Light itself.
I have heard estimates that this viewing area is like close to like $500 million. I've heard like,
I think it cost more than the actual show that they were putting in.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's quite extraordinary. And the problem, the big problem with this is all this seating is stone and it absorbs heat. So when you're sitting here during the day, it is unbelievably hot. Like everybody was like, "Oh yeah, my tuchus is burned." Right as soon as I sat down, and you're in the sun. There is no shade.
Something like this. I mean, at nighttime, I think it'd be kind of cool to do like Animal Kingdom's own variation of like an electrical water pageant.
Yes. I like they have the light up versions of the kites in Epcot Forever. They have those similar designs here. They could have made this like, light up kites and so forth, and maybe that would have worked maybe a little bit better. than just kind of having these items here in kind of the full daylight. There could have been potential there, but they decided to go day, and I don't know if it translates very well.
And I think, to Disney's defense, I do know that they're very limited and restricted of what they do in Animal Kingdom because of the live action animals and it being, harmful or, affecting their day-to-day activities, because any kind of loud sound or, pyro or anything, it's very detrimental to the environment. So I do see Disney's point of why they're trying to keep it simple. But again, you can do something simple and still make it great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing too. This is what concerns me a whole lot. We're in an era of cutbacks. We just are. I mean, it's the reality. We went through the we're still going through the pandy. The parks were shut down for a long time. We're in this era right now of Disney's looking to cut. And when you have Rivers of Light that fails, and then you have these 3 pretty underwhelming shows. Jury's still out though to see what maybe the general public feel about them. But if these 3 shows don't connect, I'm worried it's going to give Disney justification to be like, you know what? Do we really need entertainment? People don't seem to be resonating with what we're putting out. Why are we going to spend, like George said, millions of dollars on an amphitheater? No one's gonna see these shows. Why are we putting money into stuff that isn't resonating?
Yeah, you can make the argument. You can make the justification, and that's really unfortunate because even like Happily Ever After, when they brought that show back, they cut a lot of pyro from that.
Right.
And I know Steve Davison was all about the pyro in Harmonious. I didn't see that much pyro from Harmonious or even Enchantment. That's a fireworks show. I just they are making cuts all over the place. And we can kind of see that here. And this was these shows were in lieu of the attraction redos that they were going to do, and a lot of the infrastructural improvements and so forth that they were going to do for the 50th. In lieu of all those things, we got these shows, and these are underwhelming. I mean, it is concerning.
And it's funny that you say that, Dre, because after experiencing Halloween time at Disneyland and Oogie Boogie Bash with the parade, and over at Disneyland, Hallow Screams, is that what it was called? Hallow Screams.
Hallow Screams, yeah.
That is temporary, just for the holiday, but the impact was major.
Yeah,
it's like when you have something that temporary, but it packs a punch. It's almost like that's what Disney should be doing for the everyday basis for the parks every single day, and especially for the 50th. If they can do it during Halloween time, they sure can do it for the 50th. They have the potential. It's just how much do they want to put out?
Yeah.
That's the thing. They have it within them to do better. They have it within them to put on amazing shows. I mean, well,
the magic's in them.
I say that. That's it. The magic is in you. No, the magic's in you guys. You just got to bring it out. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something fundamentally wrong here because you struck out 3 times. And 2 times, maybe you just got
now. Let me
lucky,
ask.
but 3
let
times.
me ask you both this, because Disney actually officially admitted this. They didn't get to do exactly what they wanted to do for the 50th, and because of the pandemic, because of the shutdown, they still had to produce something for the 50th. Could all of this just be something subtle that was just thrown to get? Could this actually not be what the actual product was supposed to be?
Possible.
That's what I get from Enchantment. Enchantment feels very thrown together and very rushed. So, I mean, maybe you're right.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. I mean, the pandy, I'm sure, had an influence on a lot of this, on a lot of these offerings.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not just Disney. I mean, a lot of companies are making a lot of cuts right now. They took a lot of losses during these lockdowns, and it's going to take years to recover some of that. So we're going through an era of a lot of kind of budgeted things, and unfortunate, but it's just the reality.
I think Disney's in the position right now. They just wanted to produce something rather than nothing. for the 50th. And it's just a shame that Walt Disney World's 50th had to come in the crossfires of that.
It is. It is. I do wonder though, because some things got budget. Merchandise got budget. Foods got budget.
Yeah.
I do wonder this new era of Disney, with the best of circumstances, what they would have done and how different would it have been. It's hard to say, right? But I don't think, the we're seeing Harmonious play right now. The problems with the Harmonious aren't budget. A lot of it's story. A lot of it's just execution. And again, with Harmonious, with Enchantment, a lot of that stuff was there. They put projections down Main Street, obviously, but a lot of that stuff's already there. So is it a problem of budget? Is it a problem of time? Is it a problem of maybe?
Did you guys hear that it was supposed to light up all of gold? Because that's what I did.
I
think even in the
concept art, right? It shows gold.
Yeah, it was supposed to be this glittering kind of Tinkerbell pixie dust, all over the buildings, all over the castle. Absolutely. Now, I do want to say something in regards to Harmonious. Okay, look, and I don't want to come off like I'm a Steve Davison hater, because I'm not actually. He's created some of my all-time favorites. Believe, Magic in the Stars, which was Disneyland. Gorgeous, one of the best. He did Remember Dreams Come True. He's done World of Color. I love his work. But I kind of feel like, and a lot of creatives kind of hit this wall eventually, where they just run out of juice. Yeah. They're not young anymore. They're not hungry anymore, and they just kind of run out of that juice.
Yeah.
Do you think we're at a point now with Steve where it's just maybe someone younger should come in who's a little hungrier, a little more, with some fresh eyes, and come in there and kind of do these things now? Did he just kind of run out of steam?
I was just about to say, it feels like you have a bunch of. You have a bunch of kind of like messengers and not really storytellers, right? That's what it feels like with a lot of what's going on when it comes to entertainment.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And this is a company built on story.
And so I do think maybe new blood is needed, because this is A-Team. This wasn't B-Team. This wasn't Rivers of Light. This was A-Team.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't even get this to work? Maybe you're right, OG. Maybe you need new blood.
I mean, it's sad to say, I actually preferred Epcot Forever over this.
Oh, me too.
A lot of people did.
Epcot. See, the great thing about Epcot Forever is that they did exactly what we were hoping they would do for the 50th. They incorporated the Walt audio into that show, and Epcot really is Florida's Disneyland. It's that connection to Walt Disney, that groundbreaking thing that Walt wanted to do that inspired the world. It's very much Orlando's Disneyland. And I just think, I would love to have Walt in these shows. He needs to be in these shows for the 50th. It makes sense.
People have a lot of nostalgia for Epcot, like you said, in the same way that they have nostalgia for Disneyland. So I think that's appropriate. As apropos. I will say, I think Harmonious was never supposed to be just kind of 50th oriented. I think it was supposed to be closer to kind of Epcot's reimagining, and that's why there's not a lot of coalescing with that. I will say though, you could have had like a tag, right? You could have had like a 50th, like hey, like an intro or outro to kind of to kind of highlight the 50th in this way, and maybe remove it for years over. But then, like, what's the excuse for Enchantment, right? It really is unfortunate. This is how the 50th launches. Not so good.
Yeah. I was expecting a little bit more of a bigger bang in the positive way, than what it actually turned out. But I am gonna reserve a little bit of judgment, just a tiny bit.
Yep.
To actually experience it myself in person. Because sometimes you never really know. And then but based off of what I just seen the past 2 nights, nothing really that I can say that I'm like urging to go to Florida to say, ooh, I have to see this. But I definitely will, just, for my own satisfaction. And So we shall see. Hopefully, Disney can, come to the calling to either improve something, between these shows or, hopefully in time, because it's just not there for me, unfortunately. And I'm a Walt Disney World person, and I have to say, as far as with the entertainment goes, as of right now, Disneyland kind of has that upper hand as far as like with the fireworks shows and the parades and what have you, especially after, as I said, after experiencing Oogie Boogie Bash and the Halloween aspect of Disneyland. I have to say, I'm Team Disneyland on that one.
Yeah, Disneyland has, for a long time, I think, has really excelled in the entertainment department compared to Walt Disney World. I mean, Walt Disney World has had some great stuff. Happily Ever After is one of the greats, one of the best, But for the most part, I do think Disneyland has really excelled in this arena. Maybe that's because of of more frequent local visitation. I don't know. Disney World is more like kind of passing through. A lot of people, like I said, go once every decade. Some people only go once a lifetime. Yeah. So there's less of it's a different bar that you have to set. It could be that. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you, George. I think Disneyland does take this one. I think they do better with the entertainment for sure.
I think so, outside of Mickey's Mixed Magic, but we've gotten, the last 5 years. I mean, think about it. We've gotten the Pixar, the Pixar fireworks spectacular. We've gotten like the, Disneyland Forever. We have Remember Dreams Come True. We have all these Halloween Screams, Christmas. We have so many great entertainment shows to keep us around. It's so unfortunate that I don't know. I just don't know how long Enchantment's going to be around, and apparently Happily Ever After is retired forever. And it's like, wow, we just got that back, and now you're stripping it away for this show, and it's not really playing.
Well, I have to say, at least for Mickey's Mixed Magic, at least Mickey was present in the show.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I friend of the channel, Aaliyah, I'll take her suggestion, right? Bring over Happily Ever After to us. Bring it over. It can live on at Disneyland.
We'll take it. No, I would love to have that show. I mean, you would obviously they would have to adjust the castle projections, but man, I would take that show in a heartbeat.
It's doable. It's very doable.
Yeah, I'd love it.
But I want to thank you guys for joining me on the very first episode of Citrus Corner, and everyone that has joined us. I thank you so much for taking this journey along with us with the 50th anniversary nighttime spectaculars, if that's what you want to call them, but that's what we're going to call them for now. And please comment down below. Tell us what you think. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Are there some things that you like about the show, you dislike? We love to hear from you guys. Orange Grove 55, thank you so much for allowing me to do this on your channel, my brother. And VashSky, as always, I'm glad you're able to join as well. Please check out Freshly Squeezed on Orange Grove 55's channel, and of course the OG himself with his videos as well. And there's more to come. So thank you all for joining. You have a magical day.